I came to talk about resilience. Mrs. D emailed me and said that you guys had some sort of a conversation, debate about resilience. And it got to a place where you were asking the question, is resilience something that we can teach to young children? Yes, absolutely. And we're not talking about it enough. And it's not just young children, it's you too. I was telling Corey as I came into this building, I've been doing presentations with Mrs. D for 5 or 6 years now. Every time I come to Riverview High, it intimidates me. I panic every time. Because my 3 years of high school, arguably the worst years of my life, I was lucky to get out alive. Every time I come back here, the memories just come back. It's a tough time for me, and resilience was certainly something that I would have thought about during those years, even if I didn't exactly know what that was, let alone how to build it or how to work on it. I want to talk about that. There's some work that's been done around this topic that you should know about. We share it with our teachers back at Wee College when we are working with them. I argue that nobody should be allowed to work with a child unless they know about this research. You shouldn't be able to touch a child until you know this research. So we're going to talk about that. You can't tell, but that's some alien form of the word resilience. It was resilience when I typed it this morning. For some reason, we're getting a little off on the fonts. Trust me, resilience. So the question we're going to answer this morning is, what is it? What's resilience? And how can we build it, both in children and in ourselves? And I'm going to set a stage for you. This has been going on, this discussion has been going on for quite a while. Resilience is not new. If you Google it, you're going to get 1,001 quotes. 1,001 quotes about resilience. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, what matters is how many times you get up. There's thousands of quotes about resilience, so we know it's important. You're going to face situations in life that are going to require some degree of perseverance. This has been going on for a while. Now, you've all got grandfathers, uncles, somebody there in the background of your family history who will tell you stories about how they woke up at 4 in the morning, fed the chickens, fed the goats, had to walk 10 miles in snow 5 feet deep with their sister on their back, and they survived on bark and berries. And in the old days, times were tough, and adversity and challenges naturally presented themselves. You didn't have a choice. Today, your lives are a lot easier. Technology has made your life a lot easier. Unfortunately, technology has made your lives a lot more complicated. When I was your age, life was tougher, but a lot less complicated. I didn't have to worry about the same things that you have to worry about. So your need to develop resilience, our need to develop resilience in children, has changed. It's more of a mental resilience that we need to develop today, not the physical perseverance that our forefathers needed. It's not that times are tough and you have to have physical resilience. It's that things are complicated today, and it's a mental stress on everybody. Change and the rapidity of change makes it mentally difficult. Now, about 50 years ago, something happened that continues to permeate society today. You don't even know about it. I'll be surprised if anybody does. It happened 50 years ago, and it still influences how you deal and cope with stress, anxiety, and challenges today. A gentleman by the name of Nathaniel Brandon wrote a paper. He was a psychologist. He was studying self-esteem. His paper was The Psychology of Self-Esteem. And the paper argued, based on his research, that the single most important thing in your life to help you survive and succeed was positive self-esteem. If you had positive self-esteem, he said, good things would happen. And if you had bad self-esteem, bad things would happen. Simple as that. Within about 10 years, that paper triggered a movement, the self-esteem movement. Every researcher on the planet was studying it. Every writer was writing books about it. There were lawmakers making laws about it. There's actually a school district to this day in Massachusetts that every year they do a physical fitness test at their high school. One of the exercises in the test is skipping rope for 2 minutes. they don't use a rope. The kids skip rope with an invisible rope because we don't want anybody to trip and fall over the rope, because if they did, they'd embarrass themselves. That would make them feel bad. That would negatively impact their self-esteem, and that's a bad thing. I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. It's a true story. Everything revolved around positive self-esteem. We got rid of competitions. Competitions are bad. Know why? Because there's always a winner, and that's good. The winner gets positive self-esteem. And in competitions, there's somebody loses. So we did away with competitions. We stopped keeping score on scoreboards in kids' sports. Coaches started giving trophies away to everybody, just for participating. We're not going to have winners and losers, because we know what happens. There's a loser, somebody's going to feel bad. That's going to lead to bad self-esteem, and nothing good comes from that. I noticed your tests. I see red on your tests. That's a rarity today. Most teachers about 25, 30 years ago got rid of their red markers because red had come to symbolize negativity. I know when I used to pick up my tests in grade school, first thing we looked for, how much red is on my paper. Because we could tell just in a glance how bad we had done by how much red was on the paper. Teachers got rid of their red pens. Why? More red on the paper, worse I'm going to feel, my self-esteem drops, and all hell breaks loose. That was the argument to Nathaniel Branden's psychology of self-esteem. There's a huge focus on positive thinking. Anything negative happens in your life, flip it into a positive. Don't think about the negative. Adversity, challenges, anything goes wrong, just turn it into a positive. Not an easy thing to do. And as you're going to see in a minute, maybe not the wisest thing to do. This is the climate that Carol Dweck was in when she was a young psychologist at Stanford University in 1970. Like every other psychologist, she was going to study this whole concept of self-esteem. She wanted to see what would happen if she induced failure onto kids with self-esteem. She had some theories. She figured some kids were just going to knuckle under the pressure. So she wanted to set up some designs where she could experiment with that and see what happens. Here's what she did. She gave young children in grade 5 puzzles. Some of them were really, really easy. And when they did them, their self-esteem went up because they felt good about themselves. They were so good at these puzzles. They didn't know the puzzle was easy. All they knew is they were doing very well. She gave them some puzzles that weren't so easy. And she watched what happened when they failed at completing these puzzles. And she wanted to measure what would happen. She assumed that some kids were going to break down a little bit over that failure. They wouldn't be able to meet the challenge. But there was a group of kids who emerged early on that she wasn't prepared for. A group of kids enjoyed the stress. They loved the challenge. She would give them these hard puzzles, and they would get excited. They would get focused and intense. And she couldn't understand what was going on in the minds of these kids. Why weren't they breaking down over these difficult challenges? So she set up a design that today in the research world is very, very famous. Carol Dweck is one of the top 5 social researchers on the planet. You cannot get this woman at a lecture anymore. And hundreds of researchers are copying her design today and extending it into all kinds of places. This is not a weekend piece of research. This has been going on now for 40 years. What I'm going to show you this morning